What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 26 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Wednesday, December 4th, 2024. I'm your host, Zach Malat. Excited again to be joined by Josh Malat. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be back on again. We got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, definitely. Before we get started today, please subscribe below. Follow all of our social accounts. Let's start today with a couple of recaps. And I did it a couple days ago, Josh, but just recapping these last two football games for the Jets and the Giants. Let's start with the Giants. Thanksgiving Day, the Giants go down to Dallas and lose 27-22, the Dallas Cowboys, as the Cowboys now move to 5-7 and really rejuvenate their season, as the Giants then fall to 2-10 and at the basement of the NFL right now. The Giants really struggling and just trying to figure things out, both offensively and defensively. And really, I think in the last couple of weeks, it's been more of a Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, like, show me what you got for John Mara, as those two guys, I feel like they're under a ton of pressure right now to really step up and show that they're great in their positions or good enough in their positions to continue being employed by the Giants right now. Because right now, sitting at 2-10, this is a team that I can't see them winning too many games for the rest of the season. So it's going to be more so, is the locker room buying in with Brian Daboll? Is the locker room buying in with the guys next to them that Joe Schoen's bringing in? The decisions that they make in the end, of course, the Daniel Jones decision is the big one in the last couple of weeks that really, I don't think anybody in that locker room was a true fan of it. Now, of course, they then go to Tommy DeVito. He gets hurt. He doesn't even play in the game against Dallas, and Drew Lock comes in. So they got a mess right now in New York, Josh. And just untangling all of that, I think the pressure's on for those two guys, Schoen and Daboll, to really prove themselves here. But also, how are they going to win a football game? They look not even close to winning a football game. I understand that this game was 27-20, got close. It was close towards the end. This was a Dallas Cowboys win that they really were handling. It was 27-10 in the third quarter. Giants get a couple scores to make it close in my mind. This one was pretty dominant from Dallas, and it just shows that the Giants just don't have much. The injuries piling up. It's a mess right now. What do you think, Josh?
This was the marquee matchup everybody was expecting and everybody was waiting for on Thanksgiving, right? The Dallas Cowboys not in contention and without Dak Prescott, and the Giants without Daniel Jones, an absolute dumpster fire fighting for the number one overall pick. This was the marquee matchup that everybody was waiting for, right, Malamud? But no, you're right. It's been really a couple of eventful weeks and a week and a half, 2 weeks of turmoil for the New York Giants, if you will. I mean, between the benching of Daniel Jones, electing to go with Tommy DeVito, even though you signed Drew Lock to be your backup, but then Tommy DeVito ends up getting hurt anyway. So then Drew Lock ends up playing anyway, even though he thought that he should have been playing before you played Tommy DeVito to begin with. So it's just been a mess for the New York Giants, and just everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, and it's just been an absolute dumpster fire. But this is the way that it's got to keep going for the rest of the season if the Giants want to turn this thing around. We've seen it with the Washington Commanders. We've seen it with the Houston Texans. We've seen it with the Denver Broncos. So many other teams. Once you get your guy, once you get your quarterback, your fortunes begin to change. Your franchise can begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and things begin to turn around. And even though obviously every week NFL teams are going to come out and do what it takes to win. Obviously Brian Daboll's coaching for his job. Drew Lock has something to prove. He's looking to potentially get a starting job and get another NFL contract next year. So obviously these guys are going to come out and do whatever they can to win a football game week in and week out. But ultimately, if you're a Giants fan, if you're a member of the Giants organization and you want this thing to turn around, you have to keep losing every single week and secure one of those top picks, because we've seen this too much, right? Where the Giants are just kind of middling in being too bad to contend, but not bad enough where they're getting a top pick, where they're going to get that transcendent quarterback that's gonna change the fortune of their franchise. This is going to have to be the year where the Giants just suck it up, go 2-15, go 3-14, get a top pick so that they can finally reset, get their guy and get that transcendent QB talent to really take this franchise to the next level and really transform the fortunes of a franchise that's been struggling to find their guy at quarterback for many, many years now. But like I mentioned, we've seen it with all these teams. Washington, just a bottom of the basement type of team. All of a sudden, they get Jaden Daniels. It looks like they have one of the brightest futures in the NFL. The Houston Texans, after that, the whole Deshaun Watson situation, they get C.J. Stroud. All of a sudden, they're going all in, getting all these guys, and they intend on contending for a Super Bowl. The Denver Broncos, ever since they won with Peyton Manning, they haven't been able to get a quarterback. They've had a quarterback carousel, it seems like, every year. They had the Russell Wilson experiment. That didn't work out. All of a sudden, they have their guy now with Bo Nix. So really, I know that football is a team sport. I know that there are a lot of guys that go into forming a winning team. You have to build an offensive line. You need to have weapons. You need to have a full defense. You need to have a secondary. I get all that. There's 53 men on a football roster, and there are a lot of guys that it takes a lot of good players that it takes to contribute to winning. But ultimately, the most important position in football, and possibly the most important position in all of sports, is the quarterback. And if you're the Giants, you need to suck it up, lose these games, secure a top pick, and get your guy and reset. And all of a sudden, you have hope going into next year. And maybe they can get a top pick to get a Cam Ward, to get a Shedeur Sanders, if you're fortunate enough to get a top 2, top 3 pick in this year's draft. But if you're the Giants, you just have to suck it up and keep this losing going so you can finally get your guy. Because we've seen this with the Giants where they're not bad enough to get that top quarterback, and they miss out on all these guys year in and year out. So this has to be the year that the Giants, for the lack of a better term, don't screw up the tank. But I mean, as far as the game goes with the Giants and the Cowboys, I saw a lot of promising things. I mean, Drew Lock was able to run the ball. He had a rushing touchdown. He had another rushing touchdown that got called back. So Drew Lock was not bad. They targeted Malik Neighbors 13 times, which you love to see, and you just have to sell Malik Neighbors like, look, we're gonna get you your guy, we're gonna get you your quarterback. It's not gonna be this bad for that long, because obviously Malik Neighbors, after the loss 2 weeks ago to Carolina in the Germany game, then you had the bye week, and then this game against Dallas. I mean, he's extremely disgruntled, and the last thing that you want is him requesting out or him demanding a trade somewhere. So he's the most important part of your franchise, and you need to keep him happy and sell him on the future and the fact that things are going to get better. But they targeted him 13 times. Malik Neighbors didn't have a bad game. Tyrone Tracy got a touchdown, and he continues to be promising as well. The Giants made it close at the end, but like you said, the score wasn't necessarily as close as the score would indicate. So a decent amount of good things here for the Giants, but if you're the Giants, you hate to say it because you hate to root for your team to lose, but the best course of action here and the way that you can finally turn this franchise around and return to winning and return to the promised land is by sucking it up for the latter part of this year and continue to lose.
Yeah, I mean, Saints, Ravens, Falcons, Colts, and Eagles. I mean, even if the Giants do play like somewhat well, I don't even know where they find a win in there. Yeah, maybe the Saints this weekend. I think that's probably the only chance that they would have. I still think the Colts and the Falcons, and obviously they're not beating the Ravens or the Eagles, especially on the road in Philly, and even the Ravens. Like there's no stopping the Ravens right now, even though a couple losses, it's not going to be from the Giants. So definitely should be interesting right now, and an interesting time as a Giants fan, I'm sure, for you. Just watching and hoping and praying that in the end you probably are going to get a quarterback in this draft, and that's the ultimate goal, it seems like, for most Giant fans right now. So that one should be really interesting. Going to preview the game against the Saints on Friday's episode. Josh, let's move it to the other side of MetLife, where the New York Jets just also continue to lose and continue to just be disappointing in a season where they expected so much. They fall to 3-9. 3-9 the Jets sit at right now, and they lose 26-21 to the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks move to 7-5. And Josh, this actually was like the first game in a couple weeks where I was like, actually, the Jets should have probably won this game. They were good enough to win this game, and then they weren't good enough to win the game. This first half that they put on, and I should not say full first half, because once it got to midway through the second quarter, it just all fell apart from there. The pick six by Leonard Williams, 92 yards. He returns it for a touchdown, and that cut the lead to 21-13 after a blocked extra point. But then the Seahawks made it 21-16 heading into halftime. And I feel like they headed into the second half, Josh, the Jets did, and just forgot how to play football. They forget how to play football when they go from one great half to then just a abomination in the second half. It was awful. And I mean, the first couple of drives, the first quarter was definitely some positive signs there that maybe something's clicking and something's being figured out. But in the end, same old Jets, and they just continue to find ways to lose. It's crazy that even though Rodgers uh like had an okay game, like he had the two touchdowns early, it's crazy that the stat line ended up turning so poorly. And then his comments after the game of, "Oh well, there's 11 guys on the field. You're the quarterback. You're the guy. That's why they brought you in. You're the dude." And he just hasn't been the dude, Josh.
Right. I mean, the Jets get off to this incredible start, right? You had the Rodgers to Adams connection for the touchdown, and then they get another touchdown in the first quarter. They're up 14-0. You're thinking, all right, here we go. We're finally starting to turn things around. But then all of a sudden, that Leonard Williams pick six changed everything. I mean, the Jets are driving. I mean, at that point, they're up. What was it? It was 21-7 at that point, and the Rodgers is in the red zone. I believe he missed a pass to Garrett Wilson earlier in that drive, in which the Jets would have gotten a touchdown, and the whole complexion of the game would have changed. Right, all of a sudden you're up 28-7, and you're thinking, all right, the Jets have this one in the bag. This game's over. But all of a sudden, in classic Jets fashion, a potential 28-7 lead turns on the dime to 21-13 because the Seahawks get a pick six, and you're thinking, oh boy, same old Jets. I mean, that is a 14-point swing right there. I mean, that changed the entire complexion of the game. And then all of a sudden, it's another game in which the Jets were leading late, and then there was a late touchdown to take the lead. I mean, you have this game, you have the Colts game, you have the Patriots game a couple weeks back. I mean, for as bad and as disappointing the Jets have been this year, if they don't give up these late game touchdowns to the Patriots, the Seahawks, the Colts, all these games in which they've lost on a late game touchdown in heartbreaking fashion, all of a sudden the Jets are maybe 5-7, or you look into a couple other games that they could have won. This is a Jets team that could easily be 6-6, 5-7, maybe even 7-5. So for as bad as the Jets have been, it's not like they're getting blown out every game. They have every opportunity in the world to salvage some of these games, and their record could have very easily been very different than the 3-9 mark that they're in right now. But obviously, the only stat that matters are wins and losses, and that's the only thing that you see. And the Jets find a way to lose another heartbreaker here in a game that, like you said, they probably should have won.
Yeah, it's really disappointing for the Jets in the end, and the big story right now is are they bringing back Rodgers? And I mean, as a Jets fan myself, I'm saying no. Hopefully not. Just blow the entire thing up and figure something out. Whether it's coming from a new quarterback somewhere, like or you're signing somebody, like that's what I'm looking at more so. They do have talent there. I hate the people that are sitting there saying like, oh no, all these guys are dropping and they're not going to be good. I mean, Sauce Gardner's having a bad year. Sauce Gardner's really good. He's just having a bad year. Like Garrett Wilson is top five in I think almost every category in football, which is astonishing to say among wide receivers. But I mean, it's a down year overall, even so for Garrett Wilson, even when he's that high up, because the potential's so high. It's just they need a new quarterback. They need a new culture. They need everything new. Just blow the entire thing up and keep the high potential guys and kind of go from there, Josh.
Right, you guys definitely need a quarterback. I think that the Jets. I mean, it depends on where they're drafting, right? Who's available. If there's a quarterback there that the Jets see as their potential future franchise guy, they're gonna grab him. But I honestly think that the best course of action for the Jets is to maybe take their quarterback in the first or second round this year, hope that they find their guy, and maybe give Rodgers one more year. Say, go out there, show us what you got, do what you can do. Let's see how this year turns out. And the quarterback that the Jets draft can take a year, learn from Aaron Rodgers. If and we're already looking towards next year. If the year's going all right, you let Rodgers ride it out for one more year, and then he retires, and you let the new quarterback, the rookie, take over. But then if things quickly, go on a downturn in the same fashion that they are this year, then you let your new franchise quarterback kind of take over and take the reins from there. So that's kind of what I think the Jets are going to do. I think that they're going to give Rodgers one more chance, one more year to maybe figure it out, maybe see if this year was kind of an aberration and this year was kind of a fluke bad year, and really the Jets can go back to being a solid team, a respectable football team next year. But I think in doing that, they're also at the same time going to be looking toward the future and looking for their future franchise guys. So I think that's the best course of action for the Jets right now. Look for their future franchise guy. Give Rodgers one more year, and give that new young quarterback a year to learn under Aaron Rodgers, and maybe he can pick up on the things that Aaron Rodgers does in the same way that we've seen Jordan Love pick up right where Aaron Rodgers left off for the Green Bay Packers. So I think that's the best course of action for the Jets right now, and what has just been an absolute nightmare of a year.
Yeah, no, it's definitely fair. I think the big thing there is having the locker room maybe buy into a guy like Rodgers, because obviously it's been both ways. It's gone both ways, offense and defense. So they'll have to figure something out. But they lose 26-21 to the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday, and the Jets stare at a 3-9 record at the bottom of the AFC East. Let's shift things to the hardwood, as the New York Knicks were in action last night with a 121-106 victory over the Orlando Magic, and the Knicks moved to 13-8 on the year, as the Magic are 15-8 now. And this one was in the NBA Cup, as group play was capped off there, and the Knicks advance and now move on to a quarterfinal matchup against the Atlanta Hawks. But looking at this game overall, Josh, the story in this one was Karl-Anthony Towns was dominant once again. Just a couple nights after Mikal Bridges looked really, really strong, and looked pretty strong once again in this one. But it just shows overall that we've seen in the last couple of weeks that this starting lineup is really starting to gel. A great sign for the New York Knicks. They've had a couple of injuries here and there that you maybe thought, all right, well, they don't have a lot of depth. They have to really rely on this starting lineup. I mean, the expectations have gone a little bit through the roof, Josh. They have each of these guys really playing well. And you talk about when it comes to Brunson and Towns, you have to have those other guys in Bridges and Anunoby really stepping up. They've done that so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the final score, right? It says 121-106. It looks like a pretty respectable score, right? This was not a respectable game. I mean, the Knicks kind of put their foot off the gas pedal a little bit, kind of threw some of the rookies in there toward the end. But this was a 30 to 35 point game as recently, I want to say, at the end, until the end of the third quarter. The Knicks blew out the Magic. This game wasn't even close. It was not the 15-point game that the final score would indicate. But the biggest thing for the Knicks for me is the balance of the starting lineup. All five starters put up numbers. It's not like last year where you needed Brunson to go off for 30, 35, 40 points in order for you to even have a chance to beat a good team. It's Brunson can have a solid game, but sometimes Cat takes over a portion of the game. Sometimes OG takes over a portion of the game. Sometimes Mikal Bridges takes over a portion of the game. And then you have Josh Hart getting a triple-double and just doing a little bit of everything. The balance of the starting lineup and the fact that each of your five starters can take over a portion of the game at any given moment is what makes this Knicks team so dangerous, and what, quite frankly, makes this Knicks team capable of winning a championship. I love that Jalen Brunson only played 27 minutes, didn't have to waste so much energy, didn't have to go all out to carry this team, because other guys were stepping up as well. And then when the Knicks need Jalen Brunson in different games, maybe when they're playing the Celtics later on in the year, maybe when they're playing better teams later in the year, then Jalen Brunson has the energy, and they've conserved him kind of to this point. Then when the Knicks really need him, then that's when Jalen Brunson can step up and take over games late when the Knicks need him to. But this Knicks team has elite balance and elite depth in the starting lineup. And then you have Miles McBride, who's an absolute microwave coming off the bench. He'll give you 25 minutes, 18 to 20 points a game off the bench when he gets that kind of run. So Miles McBride, in my opinion, is capable of winning Sixth Man of the Year if he continues with this role and shooting the ball at an elite level from three the way that he has been lately. And Campaign has been a great bench piece as well. So I'm looking at this Knicks team, and it looks like all the pieces are kind of finally coming together, and they're looking better and better, and they're getting stronger and stronger and more comfortable with each other as the year goes on. And then another thing that I want to point out is Mikal Bridges has been magnificent these last couple games. Obviously, all this talk about Mikal Bridges' jump shot. He's not the same player. He's not worth what the Knicks gave up. He doesn't fit this team. The Knicks screwed up. The Knicks lost the trade. Just give the guy time. I mean, Mikal Bridges has looked better and better, and has looked more and more comfortable as the games have gotten on. And another thing that cannot go unnoticed is Mikal Bridges. The best ability is availability, and Mikal Bridges leads the league in minutes per game, has played in every single game. And in a day and age where you have load management and all these stars taking games off, Mikal Bridges doesn't take a game off, doesn't take a minute off. He's always available for the Knicks. And that availability is starting to pay off because he's starting to put up numbers with it, and he's shooting the ball at a much higher clip as well. And he's looking much and much better. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, there's nothing much more you could say about him. I mean, he's just a walking double-double every single game. And the Knicks are rolling right now, and with an easy schedule coming up. I mean, you look at this next week, right? You have Charlotte Thursday, Detroit Saturday, and then Toronto Monday. You take care of business these next couple games for this next week. These next couple games, all of a sudden the Knicks double up their losses. They're 16-8. You're going into the NBA Cup, but into the Cup playoffs, feeling really confident. And all of a sudden, this is a Knicks team that's rolling. And the Knicks really need to take advantage of this easy schedule if they want to get up to the top of the Eastern Conference and try to potentially catch the Cavs and the Celtics, who are both playing obviously exceptionally good basketball as well. But obviously, the Knicks have won 3 in a row. I believe they've won 6 out of their last 7. Lots of good things for the Knicks right now, and they're playing really, really good basketball, and they look like they're only getting stronger and only getting better as the year goes on.
Yeah, and Josh, to finish things off, so I'm very excited to see what happens down low when those guys get back healthy. Talking Mitchell Robinson as well as Precious Achiuwa. Obviously, Jericho Sims has done a solid job off the bench of being behind Karl Anthony Towns and just giving him minutes here and there and stepping up and just coming in, getting big rebounds and everything. But I think there's just a difference when a guy like a Achiuwa or a Mitchell Robinson will come into the game and really have an impact with that unit off the bench. And I think when you look at Karl Anthony Towns, he's playing 36 minutes last night. Like there comes to a point where you're going to want to give Karl Anthony Towns that deserved rest. And even during a game, even when it's close, you want to rely on some of those guys off the bench. I'm really excited to see some of those bigs come back into the lineup because I think it'll really complete this Knicks roster. You got Deuce McBride coming off the bench. You got Cam Payne coming off the bench. Those two guys you mentioned to come in for maybe one of the guards or one of the forwards, and even Jalen Brunson. But then you get that big coming off the bench, that solid enough big coming off the bench in place of Towns. And I mean, it should be a complete game almost every night for the New York Knicks.
Right, absolutely. I'm really interested to see the dynamic of how they utilize Cat and Mitch together when Mitchell Robinson comes back. But you nailed it on the head, Malamud. I mean, the Knicks are playing this well right now, and they look like they're getting better and better, and they're not even healthy yet. They're missing all of their big man depth behind Cat. So I'm really interested to see how they utilize both Mitch and Cat together. Do they play them together? And is another thing that they consider. I mean, Josh Hart is without a doubt a top 5 player on the Knicks, will be in the closing lineups, will still play the heavy minutes that he's playing now. But something that I would strongly consider if I'm the Knicks and I'm Tom Thibodeau is potentially starting Mitchell Robinson, shifting Cat to the 4, moving Josh Hart to the bench, and all of a sudden your bench is led by Deuce McBride and Josh Hart, and all of a sudden you've lengthened your lineup that much, and Josh Hart just makes your depth that much more. Josh Hart would still likely be in the closing lineup, and he would still play the same amount of minutes, 30, 35 minutes a night, but just giving opponents that extra look and giving the bench that extra jolt with Josh Hart coming off the bench is something that I would consider if I'm the Knicks. When you finally get healthy, you get that big man depth back, and all of a sudden you have all these toys to play with if you're Tom Thibodeau with the trio of big men of Cat, Precious, and Mitchell Robinson coming back.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like Josh Hart ever gets tired, Josh. 39 minutes last night he played. Just remarkable, and obviously had the triple-double in the end as well. So really, really impactful player for the Knicks so far this season. But to see that Bridges and Anunoby are really getting going together, and to be right next to Brunson and Towns, really good signs for the New York Knicks as they grab a 121-106 victory over the Orlando Magic. Like I said, they move on to the quarterfinals in the NBA Cup against the Atlanta Hawks next week. We go from the hardwood to the diamond as Juan Soto is the topic right now, as a lot of teams involved, Josh, and we have the New York Yankees as well as the New York Mets in the race, but it seems that whether it's this week or early next week, a decision is close to being made. That's what's being said right now. So let's get back into the Juan Soto talk just a bit, you and I, Josh. And overall, there's the 5 teams: the Yankees, the Mets, the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, and the Dodgers. Obviously, there's been some moves so far in this in this offseason and this period, the Dodgers got Blake Snell, the Mets got Frankie Montas. Like there's teams figuring stuff out besides Juan Soto, but he is the all-star there, and he is the guy that everybody is going for. Just overall looking at this saga, confidence level when it comes to being a Yankee fan, but also seeing these other teams. Has anything surprised you really?
Nothing's really surprised me. I mean, I was expecting a slow-moving offseason because the whole offseason hinges on what Juan Soto does and where he goes, right? It seems like no other big moves at free agency wise. You never know with trades, but free agency wise, as far as the other big free agents after Juan Soto, as far as the Bregmans of the world, the Corbin Burnses of the world, the Pete Alonsos of the world, it seems like everybody's kind of waiting until Juan Soto signs somewhere, and then from there, all the dominoes are going to fall, and all the pieces are going to be in place, and everybody's going to sign kind of one by one, rapid fire after Juan Soto goes wherever he goes. So I'm not surprised at all by the slow moving offseason, but from some of the reports that we've heard, it seems like Juan Soto is looking to potentially make his decision about where he's going to play sooner rather than later. So I expect that when Juan Soto makes his decision, that's when we're going to see some of these other pieces fall into place and other signings are going to happen. And this MLB, this slow moving MLB offseason will start to get going once Soto makes his move.
Yeah, definitely fair. And when you look at it from both sides, obviously in New York here, it's the big story. And of course, the Mets can go one way and get Juan Soto. They can spend a little bit more, and they need to. And obviously, the decisions when it comes to Pete Alonso and some other pitchers involved, and they already made one pitching move. I mentioned it, Frankie Montas, who they grabbed. And it really is a David Stearns type deal where a pitcher who may have not been great and may have not had their best year, but has shown flashes to still maybe give them a chance and an opportunity. Obviously, we know from Luis Severino last year and turned him into a sub-3 ERA pitcher all of a sudden out of nowhere. So the Mets really trying to go that avenue once again. But as for Soto, if the Yankees are able to get Soto, obviously that's a plus for them. They bring him back and get a player that they think could really be a Hall of Famer one day. However, if they do not get Juan Soto, because that is still something to talk about, they have a lot of money to spend and they have a lot of holes that they need to fill right now. We're talking about holes with Gleyber Torres going to be out the door. Anthony Rizzo probably going to be out the door. It just seems that the Yankees are going in a different avenue this year, but it all hinges really on that Soto signing.
Right. Obviously, everything hinges. Everything's, waiting in the balance to see what Juan Soto does. And if you're a Yankee fan, you're nervous, right? Because Juan Soto hasn't given any indication that he's going to give the Yankees any leeway or have any exceptions other than just going to the highest bidder. Now, do I necessarily think that that's true? No, but I don't think that he's going to come out and say it because obviously Soto and Scott Boras are going to try to do everything they can to get the best deal they possibly can get. But if you're a Yankee fan, you're obviously nervous about what Juan Soto's thinking, where he might go. But what I will say is I think that if the offers are comparable, if the disparity is not that much, I believe that he will choose to come back to the Yankees over, say, the Mets or the Red Sox or the Dodgers or other teams that are in the mix. If there's not that much of a disparity between offers, I'm talking maybe 20, 30 million less, not that big of a deal. Now, if we're talking a big time disparity like 100 million, 150, 200 million, then he's going to go to the highest bidder because obviously he's going to make his money. But I think that if the offers are comparable and if it's close enough, then Juan Soto will choose to remain a Yankee and stay in New York. But obviously with Steve Cohen on the other side of New York and Queens, with the spending power, with spending power just as good as anybody, he's going to go all in on Juan Soto and he's going to give him, it seems like, whatever he wants, and there's no way that there's going to be anybody that outbids Steve Cohen. So the question for Juan Soto becomes what's it going to be? Is it going to just be straight up whoever the highest bidder is and make the most money as possible, or are you going to return back to a situation where you're comfortable, where you can win, hitting in front of Aaron Judge, and maybe take a little bit less money but still break records for all-time incredibly high contracts. So we'll see what Juan Soto makes, and obviously the whole MLB offseason hinges on the decision that Soto makes. And as Yankee fans, right, this terrifies us. But if you look at the Yankees' past track record, say what you want about how this isn't the Yankees of old, this isn't the George Steinbrenner Yankees, but even under Hal Steinbrenner, the Yankees have still shown that when there's a guy out there and they want them enough, and they know that they're important enough, that they will do whatever it takes to get them. We saw it with Garrett Cole. The Yankees were not letting Garrett Cole get away. They were doing whatever it took to re-sign him. You had all the rumors about Aaron Judge leaving, how he was about to sign with San Francisco. The Yankees swooped in and were like, nope, we're keeping our guy. We're keeping Aaron Judge. So if we've seen anything in recent years, yes, the Yankees are a bit more meticulous and not as careless when it comes to giving out big contracts and spending a lot of money. And it's not the George Steinbrenner Yankees where the Yankees are just constantly star hunting and just getting every single player available the way that they used to back in the 70s, the 80s, fast forward to the 2000s where it seemed like they signed any high-priced free agent that was available. It's not the Yankees of old. But in recent years, the Yankees have shown that if there's a guy that's important enough to them and that they want to get enough, they are willing to go above and beyond and do whatever it takes to re-sign them. And that's what I hope and that's what I expect them to do with Soto. Soto showed this year, leading the Yankees to the World Series, how important he is to this Yankee franchise and just how much of a generational talent he is. And he's just somebody that the Yankees cannot let get away. So I think in the end, you're gonna hear all these rumors. Oh, he's leaning towards going here. He's leaning towards going here. The Yankees aren't willing to exceed this price. They're not willing to go here. The Dodgers offer, the Mets offers higher. I think in the end of the day, the Yankees are saying, okay, go get your best offer and then come back to us and we'll see what we can do. And I think in the end of the day, the Yankees are going to do whatever it takes to make sure Juan Soto doesn't wear another uniform in his career other than the Yankee pinstripes.
Yeah, no, it's definitely fair. And just my last point on this is the other teams involved, because I think that is very, very big. We're talking about the Blue Jays, who, I mean, the checkbook's kind of open for them. They said, all right, yeah, whatever it takes. It's really sounding like Boston. I'm just a little more iffy on because we've just seen Fenway Sports Group in the past, and the checkbook is not as open as some of those other teams. I just don't believe too much that the Red Sox are insanely involved, like these reports are showing, compared to the Yankees and the Mets. And then finally with the Dodgers, I think more so Soto is kind of wants his money right away. Like, I think when you're talking about deferred money and what the Dodgers really look at right now, that's not, I don't believe something that Soto would be too interested in. I don't know, but I'm just assuming there. And I think really what that shows is this is down to the Yankees and the Mets. It's really down to what side of New York he really wants to go to, who's going to offer what price, and what's the difference going to be in price. Because I agree with you. I think the Mets are going to offer more, but is the Yankees offer not going to be too low that it's just right in that range, and he says, all right, I'm going back.
Absolutely. I think that as long as the Yankees can make a competitive offer, as long as they're within the ballpark, within reason, I think Juan Soto stays with the Yankees. But you have Steve Cohen over there that seems like he's willing to exceed any price and give Soto basically a blank check and give him whatever he's looking for. So if the offer is that big of a disparity, we could see Juan Soto potentially playing in Queens next year, which would not be a good look for the Yankees and not good news for Yankee fans. But I think the Yankees make it a competitive enough offer where Juan Soto says, yeah, that's good enough. The disparity is not big enough for me to warrant leaving what was just an absolute dream situation in terms of the organization, hitting in front of Aaron Judge, the fans, the love affair he had with the fans, the city, the love for playing in New York. The ballpark fits him perfectly playing at Yankee Stadium. If the offer is competitive enough, Juan Soto's going to say, okay, I'm making enough money. This contract is plenty good enough for me. I'm still breaking records for one of the largest contracts ever by any player in MLB history. I'm going to stay where I'm comfortable and make a name for myself in the Bronx and remain a Yankee. So I think as long as the offer's competitive enough, he will stay with the Yankees. But we'll see what happens. It'll be really interesting to see. And I know me and you sure hope that he's wearing the pinstripes next year and for many, many, many years to come.
Yeah, definitely. The checkbooks are open from all of these teams, and we'll see what happens. news and reports that it could happen in the next week or so. So maybe the next time we're talking, Josh, Juan Soto has decided where he's going to end up. So we'll see what happens. Should be very interesting. The Soto saga continues as Juan Soto makes his free agency decision in 2024. But Josh, let's move things to college basketball because we have to talk about it. One of our favorite things in sports is college basketball, and we are in the full swing of things. We just have to talk quickly about these teams right now, specifically the top 25 and these top teams. A lot of games that happened in this last week or so. Feast week was unbelievable, and a lot of these teams, there was upsets, there were shockers, there was teams that really stood above and beyond, above the rest. So let's get into it. I think the big place that we have to just look at so far is the top of the table. Teams like Kansas, teams like Auburn. You also have Tennessee involved there. I think, in my opinion, Auburn's proved right now that they're the best team in the country. I know Kansas is sitting number one, but Auburn has those high profile wins. I mean, taking down some of those teams in Maui. You're talking about taking down Iowa State. You're talking about taking down Memphis in the championship. I mean, they had a tough road to go through. They also took down North Carolina, who's just kind of just in the mix there. It's crazy to me that Auburn is still sitting at number two, but I can see why based on Kansas's wins.
Yeah, I mean, Kansas started out as a preseason number one, and they've done nothing to lose that right. They also beat Duke. They've had pretty good wins in their own right. So Kansas has done nothing to lose, the right of being called the number one team, given that they started there, given that they haven't lost, given that they've had pretty good wins. But in terms of just a resume, I mean, Auburn is already building, a top seed worthy resume in March Madness, and we're only in December, and the season has been going on for less than a month. I mean, you mentioned it. Auburn has just had a hell of a last month, a dream start to the season, and a big time opportunity tonight going to Cameron Indoor to take on Duke. I mean, if they can win this game, this has got to be like the greatest month ever in terms of ranked, high profile, resume building wins that a team could ever imagine of in the non-conference schedule before conference play officially gets underway next month. But a team that I want to focus on is Oregon. I mean, it's very rare that you see a team go from unranked one week to all of a sudden in the thick of the top 25 pushing a top 10 ranking the next week. And they had a hell of a week in their Feast Week tournament. I mean, they took down three now ranked teams in a row. They took down Texas A&M, San Diego State, Alabama, all teams that are not only ranked, but all teams that made pretty solid runs in the NCAA tournament last year, all teams that are pretty comfortably now in the top 25. San Diego State, despite their loss to Oregon, actually had a pretty good week in their own right, and they actually moved up from being unranked to rank as a result of that week, but Oregon still took them down, had a hell of a week. They're off to an 8-0 start, and that's a team that I want to focus on because it's very rare that you see a team go from unranked to all of a sudden pushing the top 10 and comfortably in the rankings. And then on the other end of the spectrum, what happened to UConn? I mean, what a nightmare of a week they had. Big opportunity tonight at home to get back on track against a really good Baylor team. This would be a great win for them at home to kind of get their season back on track, settle things down a little bit, kind of forget about that nightmare in Maui and kind of get things back on track and get the ball rolling again. But you talk about making history and in a bad way. I mean, we're talking about the two-time defending national champions here that are going for a three-peat under Danny Hurley. Now, I get that a lot of those guys have left, and this isn't the same UConn team that won the last two national championships, but making history in terms of, I want to say the stat is that they're the first or one of the first ever AP top 5 teams to lose in 3 consecutive days to unranked opponents. I mean, what they did in Maui during Feast Week is absolutely unheard of, losing a heartbreaker in Memphis in which they came back and it looked like they were going to win that game. But then Danny Hurley with just a costly technical foul that just cannot happen. And then they lose that game to Memphis in overtime. And that really shows you a lot about the squad that Penny Hardaway has with Memphis. And they're legit too. They're a really good team. But you lose that game in Memphis. You lose a heartbreaker by 1 on a late bucket to Colorado. And all of a sudden, as if things couldn't get any worse, things go from bad to worse because you got absolutely blown out and destroyed by Dayton. So just a nightmare of a week. on 3 consecutive days, losing to 3 consecutive unranked opponents, and all of a sudden you go from two-time defending national champion, looking invincible, looking untouchable, number 2 in the nation, to 25, hanging onto your top 25 ranking by a thread. They came back and got a big time win against kind of a nonchalant opponent there at home this past Saturday, a much needed win, and after the week that they had, any win you'll take, right? But this is a big test for them tonight against Baylor at home, the home crowd backing you after the rough week that you've had, dropping from 2 to 25 in the rankings. Look for UConn to come out firing on all cylinders tonight against Baylor to really kind of salvage their season, get everything back on track, and obviously it's still early. I mean, Danny Hurley has time to turn the season around, get the ball rolling, get them back on track, and UConn's not out of it by any stretch of the imagination, but this week in Maui and losing 3 straight games to unranked opponents is really a reality check, and shows that, UConn isn't untouchable like people thought that they were. And, they won the last 2 national championships. It seems like they couldn't lose dating back to the NCAA tournament in 2023. But this is kind of really a reality check. And now these guys know what it feels like to lose. And how they respond is really going to show a lot about this iteration of this UConn team and Danny Hurley's squad, and how they're going to respond from adversity, and adversity that they really haven't had to face for the better part of the last 2 years. So a big game for UConn tonight after a really rough week.
Yeah, and UConn, a big story tonight is they're going to be without Alex Caravan, which actually just came out today. So something to really look at without one of their more experienced players tonight and going up against Baylor. But I think it was needed for UConn. Obviously, all the hype from the last couple of years, and they have to really respond after some adversity. And when you look at this team overall, like, they're full of guys that really have sat behind these national championship teams and star players on these national championship teams. So I think when you look at UConn, they'll bounce back, but definitely something to be a little bit worried about. 3 straight losses as a team that was in the top 25, in the top 5 to start the season. So definitely something to look at. My last thing tonight, Josh, is there's a powerhouse game, and I have to talk about it, and it's just inside and outside the top 5. Marquette taking on Iowa State. You know me, I'm a big Iowa State guy. I've been a fan of them and just how they play basketball, and really strong defensively, and really just in your face, hard nosed. Their one loss came to Auburn. In my opinion, Auburn's the top team in the country right now. So if they'll take that, they're 5-1 to start the year, but they're going up against a Marquette team that is nobody's getting in their way. They are cruising through teams. They're 8-0 right now. Obviously, a big win against Purdue was their biggest win of the year, number 6 Purdue at the time. But now they have to go on the road at Iowa State. It's hard to play in Ames right now, Josh, and Iowa State is a wagon of a team to really love and get behind, and I'm all in right now on that team.
Yeah, going to Iowa State, on the road in Ames, like you mentioned, has got to be one of the toughest assignments and one of the toughest road environments to go to in college basketball right now. You talked about their style of play and their suffocating defense. I mean, TJ Otzelberger has turned around this program from, I want to say, before he took over, or his first year, they were, 2-20, 2-22 during the COVID year? Just awful. And all of a sudden, he has them as a staple in the NCAA tournament, a top threat in the Big 12 year in and year out, and a powerhouse in college basketball right now. But going on the road to Iowa State is not an easy assignment for anybody in college basketball, and a really tough draw for Shaka Smart and Marquette right now. But I expect Iowa State to win this one. I mean, at home in that raucous environment you mentioned, they've been rolling this year. They've been great this year. Their only loss coming to Auburn, who's arguably the top team in the nation, and they just have a hell of a resume already. But Iowa State Marquette 5 versus 6, a hell of a game in what is a loaded college basketball slate tonight.
Yeah, what a night it's going to be in college basketball. Make sure to tune into all of those games. We go from 6:30 to 10:30, just a loaded slate of college basketball. So very excited to watch that later, and should be a great couple weeks now as we head towards conference play almost in the college basketball world. But a lot of top 25 matchups. Tune into those as these weeks go on in college basketball. And let's finish things off today with a Thursday night football preview. This one is a massive game in the NFC North. The 9-3 Green Bay Packers traveling to Ford Field to take on the 11-1 Detroit Lions. This one 8:15 on Thursday night. And Josh, this one's a big one. The Lions coming in as 3-point favorites on their home field. This total is really high, sitting at 51.5. Just thoughts on this game overall. A massive game, like I said, for both of these teams in the NFC North, with the Minnesota Vikings sitting there at 10-2 and saying, all right, well, one of these teams loses, we get a game on that team, and hopefully towards a playoff spot. The seeding, I mean, this is a massive game overall.
Yeah, this is a huge game. I mean, you said it. Lots of playoff implications on this game, division implications. I mean, these teams are in the best division in football between the Packers, Lions, and Vikings, all vying for that NFC North title. And a Packers win here, and all of a sudden things get a hell of a lot more interesting in that NFC North race. And all of a sudden you have three teams within a game of each other, all fighting for not only that NFC North title, but the best record in the NFL. That's how loaded that division is. But we've had a couple of subpar snooze fests on Thursday Night Football in the past couple of weeks, Malin. But I mean, this is a breath of fresh air to have, one of the best games of the year on Thursday Night Football this week. Should be a heck of a game between two of the brightest, young, most entertaining teams in the league. And I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, Packers, Lions, it doesn't get much better than this right now at this stage in the year, with everything that's on the line, with everything that both of these teams have to play for at this stage in the year.
Yeah, and 100%. And like I said, total sitting at 51.5. It's a real high one. The spread is -3 in favor of the Lions. And Josh, if I could remember the last time you did pick an underdog and were successful, but this one, it's a tough one here. So who are you going with here on Thursday night?
I have to go with the Lions here. I mean, the Lions are it just seems like the Lions are automatic at home. I mean, yes, you had the fortunate win on Thanksgiving with the Eberflus clock management blunder there, but the Lions just find ways to win week in and week out. They can blow you out. They can outscore you. They can defend as well. They'll win a close one. They'll win a dogfight. They'll win pretty. They just find new ways to win every single week, and it's really fun to watch. So I've got to go with the Lions here. I think that it's going to be a competitive game. I think the Packers put up points. I think it's a close game. But given that the spread is only 3, I think it's a safe pick here, where if you're going for the Lions to win anyway, then I might as well go with the Lions spread now and just hope that the Lions, and I would assume that the Lions just don't win on a last-second field goal or just win by 3. So in my mind here, because the spread has shifted from 3.5 to 3, I think the smart play here is to go just Lions to cover the spread and Lions to win outright, but just because it's such a small spread, and there's a good chance that if they win, they're probably going to win by more than 3. So I'll go Lions to win, Lions to cover, and I think that points are going to be put on the board, even though it's a really high overall. I'm going to go with the over here. I think both the Packers and the Lions are both high-powered offenses that are going to be trading haymakers, and I'm going to be going with a lot of points to be scored in this game, so I'll go with the over. So I'll go Lions to win, Lions to cover, and I'll go with the over to hit here, and we'll have a great slugfest here between two high-powered teams and high-powered offenses.
Yeah, no, definitely fair. I'm gonna actually take the other side. I'll take the Packers and that +3. I'll say that it's gonna be a real close game and just gonna come down to like a field goal or something that the Packers will be able to cover. I do think everybody's probably gonna be on the Lions in this game, because why not? Oh, all the storylines. They're 11-1. They're 5-1 at home, and that they beat the Packers a couple weeks ago at Lambeau. Jared Goff can play in any sort of weather, and they could figure things out. Oh, they have injuries? No problem. They'll be fine. They keep winning games. All of those storylines tells me, all right, I'll take Green Bay to just keep it closer than the +3. I really think the Lions will probably end up winning, but I think this one's coming down to the wire. A real tough game, and both teams know that this game is absolutely massive when it comes to playoff implications, playoff seeding. Obviously, the Lions sitting at 11-1 right now, but they drop a game, and the Philadelphia Eagles are right behind them, down their throat, saying, yeah, we want that 1 seed and the bye in the NFC playoff picture. So a massive game overall. As for the total, I agree with you. I'll take the over. Both these offenses, how can you go against them? I think the Lions' injuries on defense, plus the Packers themselves have some injuries on defense. I cannot say an under in this game, especially with this total at 51.5. They're telling me that there's going to be points there. They're telling me Vegas is that there's going to be a lot of scoring here. This one should be a great game. You mentioned it. We've had some slugfest recently. This might have a contender of top Thursday night football game of the year. We'll see what happens, Josh.
Absolutely. I mean, this has a chance to be game of the year. And you look at the potential swings that could come into play with the result of this game. I mean, the Lions win this game. All of a sudden, they have a throttle over the Packers, at least for that division. Really increase their chances of coming out with that number one seed in the NFC, which is really coveted now, given that there's only one bye in the league now. But the Lions win this game, their chances of getting the bye, the number one seed, winning the division, go up infinitely. But you flip it to the other side, if the Packers can find a way to win this game, all of a sudden the Packers are not only pretty much cement themselves in the playoffs, but put themselves right back in the race for potentially winning the division, and they put themselves in the conversation for potentially getting the number one seed, because then you'd have the Packers, Lions, and Vikings that are all within a half game or a game of each other. So the Packers win this game, all of a sudden the race for the number one seed, the race for the NFC North title, all of it gets a hell of a lot more interesting. A lot on the line for both of these teams. One of the biggest games of the year, and a great Thursday night football matchup we have on tap for tomorrow.
Yeah, 100%. And tune into that one, 8:15 tomorrow night. As like I said, the Lions taking on the Packers at Ford Field. But that'll do it for us. Josh, thanks for coming on for another episode.
Thanks so much for having me. A blast as always.
But that'll do it for episode 26 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. From Josh Malat, I've been Zach Malamud. Thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Friday.